Hello and welcome to the Cardinal News of Virginia, a podcast from Cardinal News. We're a nonprofit news outlet. We cover Southwest and Southside Virginia at cardinalnews.org. I'm Dutchie Jessee, and I want to thank our sponsor, McMurrys, serving communities with expert group benefits and Medicare solutions. So today we're going to be talking about flooding in Southwest Virginia. Flooding can be devastating, of course, for any community, but one particular region of Southwest Virginia has been hit hard and hit hard repeatedly in recent months and even the last few years, as a matter of fact. The remnants of Hurricane Helene left widespread damage in September of 2024, including in Washington County. Cardinal Southwest reporter Susan Cameron has been covering this part of the state for several decades at other papers and has been covering the region for Cardinal News for several years now, too. So, Susan, welcome to the Cardinal, and thanks for sitting down with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We thought it was a good time to update how things are there in the far southwestern corner of the state, especially in Washington County, in terms of recovery efforts from Hurricane Helene in September of 2024, and then more flooding actually that happened this past February. There's been a lot that's been going on, and you've been covering it all. So let's start by going back to September of 2024. Hurricane Helene remnants left a huge swath of damage throughout Appalachia, really, but including in Virginia. Can you recap some of that damage? Just remind us of, the impact of the damage and the scale of damage in Virginia in last fall.
Right. So the worst of the damage was in the Damascus area of Washington County and the communities that surround it, like Taylor's Valley and Green Cove. There had been several days of heavy rain, and on that Friday, it was September the 27th, that area had 4 to 6 inches of rain over just a few hours.
Yeah.
And so there are 2 creeks in town that flooded everything. They had damage to homes and businesses. Bridges were washed out. It chewed up 1.5 miles of US 58, 2-lane near Damascus. Trailer park was washed away. They had to have a lot of swift water rescues, and it was catastrophic to that community.
Yeah. So the Creeper Trail, I know, was also impacted by this. Tell us about, first of all, for anyone who's not familiar with the Creeper Trail, what is it? It's out, obviously it's a trail, a hiking, biking, and other kind of trail, but it's a significant attraction, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Virginia Creeper Trail is a 34-mile recreation trail. They hike, bike, and horseback riding on it. And it was impacted severely. The first half of it, which runs from Abingdon to Damascus, had minor damage, and in fact, it was open within a few days. The second half of it, from Damascus to White Top Station, which is near the North Carolina line, devastated. And more than half of the trestles up there were just destroyed, washed away, and then a bunch more were heavily damaged. Whole parts of the trail are just gone. So that's been a big deal because it's a huge tourist attraction for this area, particularly for Damascus, where the large majority of people in and around Damascus work in some way connected to the Creeper Trail, whether they run a bed and breakfast, a cafe, one of the shuttle services. It has a huge economic impact on our area. Before the storm, the trail has about 250,000 visitors a year. So it's just huge, and it's been devastating. But the good news was that they reopened the first half. The second half is popular because it's a downhill ride from the White Top Mountain to Damascus, and people like that. I mean, it's not hard to do. I've done it. The part in the first part from Abingdon to Damascus is it has some hills, but it has more flat land. It's a little more of a actual bike ride. But recently they opened it to e-bikes, so they're hoping that that'll bring some additional people to back to the trail.
Did you go and see some of the damage? You know, when you say like devastated, I'm thinking, I mean, I'm just imagining trees down. Um, but there are pathways on the trail. It's a trail that you said were just totally gone. So can you describe that a little more to us, the actual damage from Helene to the creeper?
Well, there's just trees broken, big limbs. Trees just fell into every part. I had a toll of the number of trees at one point. I heard VDOT say thousands and thousands and thousands of trees fell, and most of them are still there because the cleanup hasn't begun. But I mean, I was in several areas where the creeper trail runs through, and there's just nothing there. You know, it followed the old rail bed, and all of that is just washed. It was just washed away, and some of it is just covered, and they couldn't even get to it for several weeks to make an assessment of damage. So it's just gone.
Yeah.
Most of it is just gone, and a part of it ran alongside that portion of 58 that I mentioned that was chewed up, and it's just nothing there.
Yeah. Didn't you
So
walk along? Didn't you go along with, was it a VDOT official who along 58 to get more specific information on the damage there?
yeah, we walked up that. It's 58 off of. It's a two-lane 58 right outside of Damascus, and we walked from the bottom to the top. And you start out, and it went down to one lane, and then that lane disappeared, and then there was just this big gulch, and the creeks had filled in where the road used to be. So it looked like a bomb went off, actually, in that area. So that was very telling. You can write about anything from talking to other people, but there's nothing like going and seeing it yourself. And it was, and there were a couple of the trestles from the Creeper Trail on 58, and so we got a good look at that. Was our first really good look at the damage to the actual trestles. So yeah, that was a very telling visit.
And how critical is US 58 in that part of the state for those of us who aren't down there all the time?
It's a connection between North Carolina and Tennessee and Abingdon.
Mhm.
A lot of people shop in Abingdon. They come down to go to Johnson Memorial Hospital. Um, and also it's used by these businesses that cater to the tourists for the Creeper Trail, because that's the route the shuttles take when they carry people up to the top of the mountain for the bike rides.
Yeah.
So
You,
it's a lot of people travel on it, and a lot
yeah.
of people have been detouring now for 7 months. So, but can I tell you the good news about
Yes,
58?
please do. We love it.
Back in March, Senator Kane was here,
Mm.
and he toured some of the damage, and we went back up to 58 and walked it again. And last they started, VDOT started reconstruction, and by VDOT I mean Virginia Department of Transportation, started working on it. And they said at the time, it was late last year, they said at the time it'll take a year to finish it. But when we went back in March with the senator, they're now saying it'll be done in 6 months. So they're expecting it to open. The last I heard was the end of May. So that was really good news, and
Yeah.
meant a lot. Gave a boost, I think, to the town.
Yeah, I think that's great to point out. That's a huge difference. You know, there was also some recent good news that you reported on. There was a couple, a particular couple there in, I think it's Damascus, the McMurrys, and they recently was an actual big old event celebrating um, the construction, I guess, of their new home. They survived Hurricane Helene, but they had quite a harrowing experience. And so talk to us a little bit about that couple for anyone who didn't see the article at cardinalnews.org. And by the way, some great photos there from this story and from all this coverage from Ben Earp, who's a photographer down there that you work with. So I want to give a shout out to him. and the good work y'all are doing together on this. So tell us about the McMurrys.
Carl and Linda McMurray are a couple in their 80s. They will have been married 58 years in June. So when Helene struck, they lived in a 125-year-old home that belonged to her grandparents originally. Her grandparents raised 12 children there. Her mother was born there, and she was born there. And she's lived there it's the Taylor's Valley community, which is a community just outside Damascus. So they were at home the day that the storm hit, and a bunch of debris jammed up against the bridge across the creek. It's White Top Laurel Creek. It dammed it up, and so it sent the water directly into the community.
Mm-hmm.
And their house came off its foundation. And this all happened very quickly. And then the house split in two. And when that happened, he went into the water and she went downstream and in what was left of half the house. And so each of them thought the other was dead. And he clung to a tree for like 6 hours until he was eventually rescued by a helicopter. She heard the helicopter and thought it was looking for her.
Mm-hmm.
But she was sitting in an old rocking chair in her sewing room in just this section of house that had dislodged. And she had a really long night. I think she was in that chair in the water. She wasn't physically in the water, but she actually stayed pretty dry. But I think it was 16 or 17 hours she was stuck in that house. And finally, after she said the Lord's Prayer, Psalm 23, she recited over and over, just prayed all night. And finally morning came, and her neighbors rescued her, and they actually carried her out of the creek in that rocking chair.
Wow.
So it was about 24 hours before she and her husband realized that they were both made it, and they were reunited. So their house, which meant so much to them, was totally destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that they had left from their house was that rocking chair. So last week, they had a house dedication for them. The Mennonites group they didn't rebuild, they built them a new house. And they had a big celebration last week that was attended by about 100 people and the governor. So they have a brand new 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. They moved it way up on the hill, though, so they're not going to have to worry about.
Right. I was going to ask you about that. Where? Because, I saw the photo um, with the caption about how the house was literally torn in two. So for listeners, like Susan said, it was kind of ripped apart. No, it literally was. And in the photo, there's a really good photo. I believe it's Ben or
It's Ben's,
that
yeah.
shows that, which again, as you say, Susan, and this is so true, there's nothing like being there to see it in person. Video, photos can only do so much. I will say Ben's photography is really good and compelling. But you're right, to see it in person, I'm imagining the things you've seen in person from being down there and covering this has so much impact from being there in person. And to imagine a house literally being torn by floodwaters is pretty intense. And I wonder about the trauma just of that experience, the harrowing experience. The story you wrote was very positive and upbeat and really nice for a community that's suffered so much loss recently. So I know a lot of people, we enjoy hearing the good news and the success stories, if you will. But they moved the house, right? It's up high, like you said, it's not in the same path.
They built the house up, sort of up and over behind. It used to be a hayfield, she said. She grew up there. So yeah, they're not going to have to worry about being flooded anytime soon. And they have a really beautiful view of that valley.
Mm.
So, but I think that the community came out, and this was a story that could have ended so differently. And it was a bit of good news, and I think they were happy to have something to celebrate. But the fact is that, it's been 7 months since the storm, and they've accomplished a remarkable. Um, there were you want me to I can go into some of the statistics about.
Yeah, yeah, you can. We're going to talk
um,
about how some of that was accomplished, but go ahead and finish your thought.
what I was going to say is they've just accomplished a tremendous amount in that time with the help of volunteers mostly. But there were 83 homes that were uh, damaged, and 80 of them have been rebuilt,
Wow.
repaired already. I'm sorry, my voice is it's allergies.
That's
Um,
okay.
the And then there have been 4 new houses, including the McMurrys, built.
Mhm.
They have 4 more underway that they're expected to finish in about a month. And 2 tiny homes were donated.
Mhm.
But it's just night and day in that community.
Well, one of the things that Cardinal News has been covering, you some, but also Beth Byer, who is in Richmond for us, is some of the flooding relief and some of the declarations of disaster and dollars coming to the community to help in those recovery efforts. But one thing that is so remarkable about Damascus and this particular area, like you said, 80 of the homes are already either rebuilt or repaired. There's been a lot of volunteer efforts towards that, and there's a new organization that I read about in your coverage called Trails to Recovery, specifically formed after Hurricane Helene for this region of the state. What do you know about that group?
Trails to Recovery is it's called Trails to Recovery because Damascus is known as Trail Town, USA, because not only does it have the Virginia Creeper Trail, the Appalachian Trail runs through there. So Trails to Recovery, within days of the flooding, they realized that they needed help. They needed some person or somebody to organize and handle all these volunteers, scheduling donations, and working with these these faith-based groups who've come in and done the repairs. So they formed this 11-member board. A lot of the members have talents and knowledge in different areas, so they complement each other, and they've just overseen this whole rebuilding effort.
They have a Facebook page, and one of the things I noticed on their website too was, we talk about donations. I think a lot of there's been so much disaster in the last several months with Hurricane Helene, and then other flooding that happened in February. Just things are always happening, and people sometimes don't know how they can help, and maybe people, it is a rough economy too, don't feel like they can make a donation financial. But I know Trails to Recovery also accepts donations of, materials. There are people right there who I'm sure have donated materials or time, their abilities that they have to help towards these repairs and construction. You were saying to me, Susan, that before we started, about Damascus. It's a small town. There's just a lot of these small kinds of towns in Virginia. We have a lot of rural areas in the Cardinal News coverage area, which is Southwest and Southside Virginia. And I'm sure this is true for so many towns across America. So I'm not saying, oh, it's unique here, but tell me what you were telling me about Damascus. What's the culture of the place, to have an event built around this one couple, and the Mennonite group step forward and actually do the construction or manage it, supervise it so much that it becomes an event like this. Tell me about Damascus and what kind of community it is.
I've been kind of blown away by how much people love Damascus. It is a special place. It's a beautiful little town. It has a lot of Victorian houses. You've never been to a more beautiful place in the fall. but it has 2 creeks that run through it. It's just, there's something special about it. And people, the response has been tremendous from people who love the Creeper Trail or love the Appalachian Trail, have been through there, but also people who've never been there. The head of this committee for Trails to Recovery said during the ceremony when they dedicated the house, he said his number got out, his phone number got out, and he had 454 calls in one day from people who wanted to come volunteer.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been overwhelming, and you know, it's this it's a real resilient area,
Mhm.
and
It's nice
it
to see the good news coming out of it too. So I want to, as a Cardinal News reader, because I read us, but you're our boots on the ground in that part of the state, Susan. You've lived down in that area of Virginia generally for a long time, and you cover it for us. And but it is nice because there has been so much devastation, especially recently. The flooding that took place in February, that was a Valentine's Day-ish timing wise, I think. How did that affect? Was it the same exact areas affected as had been hit by Helene, or slightly
um,
different?
since the summer of 2021, and I believe it was August of 2021, Southwest Virginia, far Southwest Virginia, has had 4 major catastrophic flooding events.
Mm.
It started, 3 of them have involved Buchanan County. The first one was in the Hurley community. Um, the second one, which came 11 months later, I believe in July of 22, hit the Whitewood section of the county. The third one was the Helene flooding, which affected a lot of areas, but I think Damascus was the hardest hit. And
Mhm.
then the most recent one happened on the weekend of February 15th and 16th. And that again was Buchanan County. It was Hurley, it was Grundy, and also Dickinson, Tazewell, Russell counties were hard hit. I went over there I think it was a day after the flooding. Ben and I went to Hurley, and it was even the place where the shelter that they had set up had no
Mhm.
power.
Mhm.
They were eating in the dark. Somebody had one of the old, like a mining lamp on their head, and they were
Right.
eating in the dark. And it was just absolutely covered with mud. But that Hurley has been hit just numerous times, and it's been tough for those people over there, and they need some help too.
Yeah. Well, I know you'll keep covering, updating us on recovery efforts and funding and all those good things. So I really appreciate your sitting down with us and for all your coverage of all these events, including the good news that we really like to see coming out of there too, and also the work you're doing with Ben Earp in his photography as he assists. So, Susan, I always like people to know how they can easily reach out to you if they had something they wanted to talk to you about for news coverage or a story idea or anything. What's your email address?
It's Susan at cardinalnews.org. And my number is 276-791-5928.
And all that information, everyone, is also available on our website, cardinalnews.org. So thank you very much, Susan Cameron.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks everyone for listening to the Cardinal News of Virginia. Thank you to our sponsor, McMurrys, and to Cardinal's own Zach Shelton for production support. Read all of our paywall-free journalism at cardinalnews.org. I'm Dutchie Jessee.
From Red Oak to Greenville, Bluefield to Orange, and Gold Vein to Silver Beach, the Virginia Press Room features the voices of Virginia's press corps from every corner of Virginia. The podcast is a joint production of the Virginia Public Access Project and VPM News. Get the top headlines of the week and the inside scoop on Virginia politics when our top reporters open their notebooks and tell us the story behind the story. New episodes every Monday morning.